Welcome to the monthly market report for April of 2022. My name is Jay Cottrell. I am a real estate agent with eXp Realty here in the Tri-Cities, and this is the first of these monthly reports that I've ever done. So I hope to be able to do these every month for you to kind of give you a picture of what's going on nationally, but also throw in some data on our local housing market as well. This is in addition to the little weekly short marketing updates I do. This looks at much more big picture and is definitely not going to be a minute. Of course, those ones aren't a minute either, but these will be much longer. I also want to go ahead and apologize. Doing this myself, trying to keep track of everything. You're going to see me looking away, pushing buttons and doing things. I'm just going to go ahead and apologize for that. I know that's kind of a no-no when you do these videos, but at the same time, I'm trying to produce and do the video at the same time. So there's no way around it. So hopefully you'll give me a little bit of grace on that and it won't be too distracting from the information that I'm going over. So today we're going to start off the bat with the impact of rising mortgage rates on the housing market. And let me get this pulled up here for you all. All right. So what I've compiled with you, before I go into that, so one of the things that people are seeing mortgage rates rising, and that's prompting questions. Even though I've gone through this several times on some social media posts, as well as with the weekly market minute updates, it's still, people see the rates rising. They want to know what that's going to do on home prices. They want to know what it's going to do on home sales. So it's still just a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty. So what I've compiled for you, and first off, let me give a big shout out to Keeping Current Matters, who compiles all of this data and makes it available to me to present to you. So this is definitely not something an independent real estate agent like myself could compile monthly on my own. And even still, it still takes quite a bit of time to set up for this, even with them doing the heavy lifting. But it's a really big thanks and shout out to them for doing that heavy lifting and making it available to their members. So what they've done is gone back and pulled together the historical data to show us what's happened historically when mortgage rates were rising and what happened in those environments. So you can use that data and the facts to kind of create your own opinion about what's going on in the market. You'll hear my opinion, but I'll really want to show the data to you and just kind of let it speak for itself. And then you can be much more well-informed, because really that's what's important to me. All of my clients that I work with, I really believe in a well-informed client. Whether you're buying or selling, I believe that you need to know the information so that you can make a very informed decision for yourself and your situation. So the impact of rising mortgage rates on the housing market. No surprise, right? Mortgage rates are on the rise. This data comes from Freddie Mac, and it goes back to the very beginning of the year, where we're at about a 3.1% interest rate, and now we're already at a 4.67% interest rate. This is Freddie Mac's average rates throughout the day, so they're kind of looking at various different mortgages from different banks and different lenders and making a kind of an average prediction from there. What does this mean? Well, rates are projected to continue rising. That's what the experts are saying. That's what I've been sharing with you all along, but likely at a more moderate pace. And that's because the Fed has risen their rate and mortgage rates to follow that. And so this comes from Len Kiefer, Deputy Chief Economist of Freddie Mac. He says, mortgage rates are likely to continue to move higher throughout the balance of 2022, although the pace of rate increases is likely to moderate. Much of the increase in rates in early 2022 is in anticipation of what will happen later this year, especially with the Federal Reserve interest rate policy. And so, again, at a more moderate pace because the Fed has risen their rate, and mortgage rates tend to follow that, though it's not a direct correlation. The federal rate really impacts the rate at which banks lend each other money. Not necessarily the mortgage rates directly. If you look at treasury yields, bond yields, those are more closely aligned with mortgage rates, though again, none of it's exact. But still, it takes a lot of uncertainty out of the market by the Fed's already letting people know what they're probably going to do throughout the rest of the year. And so some of these rate increases have been priced in because experts know what is projected to happen. So as we look at mortgage rates rising, we're projected to see them continue to increase, but at a much more moderate pace. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, the big question people are asking is what's going to happen to home prices as mortgage rates rise? So a lot of people think that when rates go up, prices will go down. Well, I want to share with you today the data that the team at KCM has pulled together on this. So what you're looking at here is the impact of rising rates on home prices when mortgage rates rose by more than a percentage point. So this goes all the way back to October of 1993, so almost 30 years. Pick yourself up at the floor. I know it's kind of hard to believe that 1993 was 30 years ago, but it shows you that there was, an average of about 8% home price appreciation as mortgage rates are rising by more than a percentage point. So overall, what we can see is that rising rates have not had a negative impact on home prices, or if they did, a very minimal one. So let's take this one step further, because there are a lot of people more concerned with questions about what's going to happen with sales, especially weary buyers that are just tired of competing with so many other buyers on the offer and having to compete in bidding wars every time they find a house they want. Well, if we add in home sales for the same period of time, going all the way back to 1993, now what we can see is there's an average decrease of 11% in home sales as prices were rising. So we know as rates rise, that tends to sometimes reduce buyer activity. It prices some people out of the market. So as the rates rise, you can no longer afford the same mortgage that you did on a lower rate. So some buyers, unfortunately, do just get priced out of the market. They can no longer afford that home that they really want. So they just quit looking. So it does cause a decrease in home sales, but the average is only 5% decrease. So you can see 11%, 2%, negative 2%, plus 2%, negative 14%. Of course, that was, as we know, the rise up to the 2008 crisis and bubble. So that's one of the reasons why there's a big number there. But an average of only about a 5%. So it does decrease sales, but not by a huge number. But what we want to look at is what this means overall. And I think what I've been talking about for months now is that we have a fundamentally different housing market than we had ever before, but also in some of these environments. So let's take a look at that first line where, October 93 to 94, mortgage rates increased by 2.38% to a final rate of 9.2%. So that was a big jump in that time period. But let's be super clear that we're not looking at a 2.5% increase in mortgage rates right now. At least that's not what anybody's projecting. So according to the experts, to get up to a 9.2% increase or 9.2% mortgage rate, I think you'd have to see a much bigger economy fall than what's being projected. So we're in a very, very different market that we're talking about. Most experts are talking about maybe a 5.5%, 5% increase, not increase, but mortgage rates being about 5.5% by the end of the year. So let's factor out that so we can look at rising mortgage rate environments that were closer to what we're seeing today, which is 1-to-1 and 1 to 1.5% increase. Let's look at the same data. What you can see overall, there's a little bit of orange, a little bit of black. Again, it was down 2%, up 2%. Roughly that 2% on impact on home sales and mortgage rates are rising is a similar environment. And of course, the outlier is 2005, 2006, which again was the lead up to the housing crisis where everything dropped by 14%. What we can see here is that when you factor this data out, we start to see that rising mortgage rates don't have a huge impact on home sales. Why is that? I think one of the big things we have to look at is what is available for sale. We have to look at the inventory component because today what we are seeing is drastically low inventory. Inventory today is lower than it was in January 2021, which is already record low inventory. So we're even lower than that. And keep in mind, again, that was historically low. It's a huge deficit. And when inventory is that low, we want to think about what's projected to happen going forward. Home prices are projected to continue rising because there just aren't enough homes to sell. We talk about supply and demand a lot in this environment, and that's what drives home and price appreciation. I've been talking about supply and demand a lot as we've been meeting together over these videos. When we think about home prices rising and home sales, we're also seeing plenty of buyers in the market. It's really a matter of buyers can't find a home to buy. There's just not enough inventory to do that. When you see headlines about a softening in home sales at any point right now, it's not because of rising mortgage rates. It's because there aren't enough homes to buy, and buyers who want to buy aren't able to find them right now. So let's layer in that inventory, because I think this really helps paint the picture of what's happened historically and where we're headed as well. So when we look at the months of inventory, we only have it going back to 2000 and 2004 for this series of data. But what we have is 5 months of inventory, 4.5 months of inventory, 4.8 months of inventory. We had a very, very different inventory level than what we have today, where we're at a month or less of inventory, especially here in our own market. So when we think about those environments where it looks like 2005, 2006, 2012, 2013, where there's a little bit of a negative impact on sales, inventory was much different. We had almost 4 times the inventory that we do today. And even that, at those inventories, those were seller's market inventory. So seller's market, a balanced market is 6 months of inventory. Those were already slightly into the seller's market, definitely not as far as we are now, but again, 4 times the inventory that we currently have today. So as I've been saying since I started these weekly market minute videos, home prices are projected to continue rising. Inventory is still very low, and that is the driver that's going to propel us forward when we look at what could happen in the market with home price appreciation as well. So let's pause and kind of summarize what we've been talking about so far. As we look at this data, mortgage rates rose by more than 1%, and when looking at a similar environment to where we are right now, home prices continued to appreciate, though at a much slower level. There was a negligible impact on home sales outside of the 2008 housing bubble, and then months of inventory was very, very different. And where we are today in months of inventory is projected to continue to make home prices continue to rise. Let's take a look at what some of the experts are saying about it, what's going to happen with the market, and we can lean on the data to be able to formulate your own market opinion. But you can also lean on what the experts are saying to kind of help you either understand the data or to give you a different opinion on it. So while short-term interest rates will push up mortgage rates, this is Nadia Evangelo, Director of Forecasting at the National Association of Realtors. I expect this impact to be mitigated eventually through lower inflation. Thus, I expect the 30-year fixed mortgage rate to continue to rise, although we aren't likely to see the big jumps that occurred over the past few weeks. So what's this saying? It's saying inflation is driving this increase in mortgage rates. She expects it to continue to rise, and that's what I've been saying. And now I'm sharing with you what the experts are saying, but it won't be as quite at a rapid pace as what we've seen over the past few weeks, because that's the nod to the Fed and to experts pricing this in. What is Freddie Mac saying? History suggests that when rates rise, there is an initial bump in home sales, as many move quickly to buy a home before rates increase further. But after that period, home prices slow. Freddie Mac analysis shows that a 1% increase in mortgage rates results in home price appreciation that is 4 percentage points lower. What's that mean? So, for instance, a 1% in mortgage rates would change home price growth from 11% to 7%. So what is Freddie Mac saying? We certainly feel that home price appreciation will slow. Mortgage rates will slow some of the frenzy, but we're not talking about depreciation of home values. We're talking about a softening or a deceleration of the appreciation of home values that will help slow some of the frenzy as we move forward into the housing market. And as you can see, if on average a 1% increase in mortgage rates only slows the appreciation by 4%, we're at a 24% price increase year over year right now. So that would just take it down to a 20% price increase. So again, it helps, but talks of a crash and other things I think are not what we're seeing happen right now. And so another one, Len Kiefer, Deputy Chief Economist of Freddie Mac, says, with rates rising and expected to rise through 2023, it makes sense to obtain a purchase or refinance mortgage if you are in good standing. So if your homes are never going to be as affordable as they are right now, rates are never going to be as low as they are right now. So it makes sense that if you're in a mortgage that has a higher interest rate than the current rate right now, you might want to talk to your lender about refinancing that mortgage to see if it'll help save you money. And if you're looking to purchase, I would purchase sooner rather than later. So that brings us to the spring housing market. Let's look at the predictions for the spring housing market. It's a much different market than most thought we would be in by now. Even a lot of us here locally back in the fall, we were thinking that we would be in a much different place right now. And I think this quote, this is from Mike Simonson from Altos Research, says what I think we've all been thinking, both home buyers, sellers, real estate practitioners, and that's that we keep watching for it, but there are absolutely no signs of a market slowdown anywhere in the data. If anything, we're seeing the market continue to heat up. And no doubt we're in a very, very busy market. We've been in one for the last couple of years, all through the times we were in COVID, all through last year, and certainly coming into this year. Many were saying, okay, maybe the market's starting to moderate, but we're seeing a very, very busy market right now, maybe even busier than ever. And I think part of that, we're seeing such huge buyer traffic is, even though a lot of people were trying to move through the pandemic, there were still a lot of people that were much more cautious and said, we're staying put. We're not doing anything crazy because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. Well, now we're almost 3 years into it. We're kind of living with it at this point. And I think you've seen a lot more people jump into the market saying, okay, I'm not worried about COVID anymore as far as buying a house. We're ready to move. And that's why I want to show you this buyer traffic index. So as we start to break down this data by traffic maps, NAR, the National Association of Realtors, just came out with the most recent buyer and seller traffic maps. So let's look at this buyer traffic map, which you see all over the country with a few exceptions, strong traffic from buyers. The rise in rates is not slowing down buyer traffic across the country. In fact, I would say it's actually moved it up. So people are trying to get a home now before the rates rise even further. So it's actually kind of supercharged buyer activity. We certainly can say a few states there's maybe a stable buyer traffic. We're going to continue to watch that. But as we head into the spring market, very, very, very strong buyer demand. And the rise in interest rates, again, is not slowing buyers down across the country. Now, if we look at the other side of this coin, seller traffic, it's very, very weak to very weak seller traffic all across the country. So as a matter of fact, in the middle of the country, like above Nebraska and Wyoming, it kind of looks like there's nothing there. But there is. It's just there's apparently not a lot of people moving or in those areas. But everywhere else is pretty much stable to weak to very weak. You don't see strong or very strong anywhere on the map. And if you were to ask about the seller traffic, there would be, sorry, getting myself confused. So across the country, very, very few sellers. So what happens? So anytime we're in that type of market, we have strong buyer demand and a lack of sellers, it's going to keep the upward pressure on prices. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But so here's another graphic. It's talking about the active listings nationally increased for the first time in 6 months. So this is the active monthly listing counts in thousands compiled by Realtor.com. So if there's any sort of good news relative to sellers and listings is in March. Active listings increased in this country for the first time in 6 months. So if you go back to the fall of last year, around September, we started to kind of fall down in active listings, all those being consumed by the buyers in the market, and we're starting to see a tick up. Very little, but nonetheless a tick up. However, it is a little bit of a different story here locally. So as you can see by this graph, this is from our own local MLS here. You can see we have not seen that slight tick up in our local market yet, but we always tend to follow behind national trends a month or so. One other thing to note, in the increase in active listings that occurred heading into the fall of last year. Like I mentioned, at this time, last fall, many of us thought that the market might finally be turning around and cooling off. Well, that didn't happen, and the number of active listings has fallen by almost 50% since it peaked in October. So we are very short on listings, and we need much more to combat the growing demand for houses in our region. Lance Lambert, editorial director of Fortune, says now more industry insiders are throwing out their previous forecasts and replacing them with more bullish short-term outlooks. Indeed, some experts say that 2020 spring housing market might go down as the most competitive market on record. So all this is leading to a sort of bias towards the upside, meaning forecasters that are looking at the market are saying, you know what, we thought it was going to be this amount of activity, but we're seeing it's a bit more than that. And I think it's articulated well in the quote that I just said, because, not just marketing insiders, a lot of us here locally had to throw out our predictions once we start seeing the drastic reductions in inventory that happened after the fall. So they're replacing them with much more bullish short-term looks. And again, some experts are saying that the spring 2022 housing market might go down as one of the most competitive in history. So let's go back and kind of review all this again. Strong buyer demand, weak seller traffic, all of this leading to a very competitive market, actually a very, very competitive market. But, if you look at what's been dominating news cycles, it's the lack of pending home sales. A fall in pending home sales, confusing myself. This is a look compiled by the research team at Keeping Current Matters. I think it gives you a good synopsis of pending home sales over the last several months. Pending home sales have dropped, and I've continued to make the argument that pending home sales are down not because there's a lack of demand in the market, but because there's a lack of inventory. I even made this comment correcting a local news station when they posted an article that made completely wrong conclusions, in my opinion, on what declining pending sales meant, because sales are only declining because sellers can't buy anything. Well, they can buy, but there's a lot less for them to choose from. So it's simply because we can't sell what we don't have. We simply cannot reach the market potential in real estate because we don't have the number of homes to be able to sell for the number of people that want to buy them. Again, all of that keeping upward pressure on prices. But if you look here, the upper left-hand corner, 100 is measured by the NAR as a healthy level of pending home sales. We came in February at 104.9 in pending home sales. So certainly seeing a healthy market, but down nonetheless because of the lack of active listings. Again, I think we can say that is because we don't have what we need. It's certainly not because there isn't demand in the market. I've actually made a comment to clients and friends that I could make quadruple the number of sales I'm currently making if there was an adequate number of homes for my buyers to choose from. So this is a look at showings measured by showing time. The source is, showing time. Gotcha. Look, there's almost double the amount of showings than before the pandemic. The lack of existing home sales is not because there's not demand in the market. Once again, there's very much a strong demand in the market. It's because of the lack of available homes. All of this keeping that pressure on upward prices. As you can see, even in 2018, the February before the pandemic, the year before it started, we've seen almost double the amount of buyer traffic than we did prior to the pandemic. And you can see that even during the pandemic, it has done nothing but increase year after year. So this is the latest look from CoreLogic on price acceleration. So as we came through last year, we said, okay, prices seem to have peaked, if not, plateaued, maybe not so much. What we're seeing through November, December, and now January and February and March here locally is ratcheting up in the amount of appreciation year over year. Locally, residential median sales prices are up 22% from last March and up 19% just from January of this year. So 3 months ago, we've already seen a 19% increase in the median sales price. So very, 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 very competitive market. So this quote, this is all summed up by Craig Lazara from the Case-Shiller report. So last fall, we observed that home prices, although continuing to rise quite sharply, had begun to decelerate. Even that modest deceleration was on pause in January. The 19.2% year-over-year change for January was the fourth largest reading in 35 years of history. So this is from the Case-Shiller report, 19.2% appreciation, 19.1% from CoreLogic on the previous slide. Those are basically both in the same neighborhood. So let's just call that a lot of appreciation and well ahead of historical appreciation. So now I want to give you 5 groups of slides that will help round out the data for you and should help tell the story of our current market. The first is looking at active listings versus new listings. So as you can see in the blue, that's the active listing count nationally as reported by Realtor.com. These numbers are in thousands versus in the green is the number of new listings. What you can see here is in January, February, and March, we started seeing the number of new listings start to increase since they had started steeply decreasing since about August nationally, to where in March, the number of new listings outpaced the number of active listings currently on the market. So what does that do? That shows a great picture of kind of what's happening. As soon as something comes on the market, it sells. And you can see that here in March, look at new listings outpacing the active listings on the market. The local picture is very similar. So look at this data that I compiled from our local MLS. And what you can see is the trend lines are mimicking very much what's happening nationally. But as you can see, we have not hit that increase in active listings yet. The decrease has slowed down, but even though nationally the number of active listings has increased for once, it has not happened here yet. We've seen the number of new listings start to rise, but once I add in closed numbers, you can see that, again, all that's happening is the new listings are getting gobbled up by the buyer demand. So they're not converted into increasing our number of listings on the market. They're simply getting sold as soon as they hit the market. So this tells the story of why it's so hard to find a home right now, why prices have risen the way that they've risen. And the simple answer is right there in the green. Well, actually, it's not green, it's light blue. But for 14 straight years, we've been below the 50-year average in builds in this country, going all the way back to the 1970s. So back in the 70s and 80s, there were more homes completed, more homes built in this country than there have been in the last 14 years. All of that coming out of the fallout from the housing crisis in 2008, where builders were hit extremely hard. They've had to slowly build back their capacity, mostly because a lot of builders just completely went out of business, got out of the industry altogether. So their ability to bring new builds to market has been severely hampered. But that, no doubt, has contributed to the lack of available homes coming to the market, and that's constricted supply. So a lot of people want to buy, driving the price up, making it hard to find a home, and we're not building enough new homes to help increase that level of supply. Actually, to get out of the deficit of new homes that we've had over the past 14 years. This is home ownership as a hedge against inflation. And what this is going to show you is when you're in an inflationary economy, you want to be invested in hard assets that outperform inflation, such as a home. This is going back all the way to the 70s. The blue bar there being the inflation rate, the light blue bar being home price appreciation. But we know there was something going, and you see most decades, home price appreciation has outperformed inflation, maybe neck and neck in the 80s, a little bit more inflation in the 2000s, but what we saw in home price appreciation, but we know that there was a major issue that happened in the 2000s as far as the housing crisis of 2008. So many of those decades, housing well outperformed inflation. Something to keep in mind if you are concerned about inflation. There have been many in the past year that have taken advantage of their homes' appreciation and value and the ultra low mortgage rates to either refinance their current mortgage to lower their payment or to use the appreciation to get rid of the PMI that's on their current mortgage. Others used cash out refis to pay off credit cards, pay off car loans, other outstanding debts like student debts, or just to make improvements on their home. So owning a home can provide great stability in unstable times and give you a really good hedge against inflation. Another question many people ask me is should I buy right now or wait it out? Well, this graphic right here shows just what's at stake. In the Home Price Expectation Survey, the Home Price Expectation Survey, the survey of 100 economists, real estate professionals, market investor professionals that say what do you think is going to happen with home prices between here and 2027? And this is the potential growth in household wealth over the next 5 years based solely on an increased home equity. If you purchased an average priced home about $360,000 in January of this year, what do you stand to lose? Just over $96,000 in home equity. That's real money. You may be thinking, gosh, I'm concerned about prices. And there are a lot of people that are, but certainly as experts look at this, they're forecasting home price growth well into the next 5 years. So you'll have to wait it out for 5 years if that's going to be your strategy. However, while you're waiting, homes are only going to get more expensive. So if you're waiting on the sideline right now for home prices to go down, this is a compiled look at what the experts are saying, the experts that KCM follows. There are 7 experts here on the average, home price appreciation being 6.7%. So you can see on the upside, CoreLogic has a forecast of 9.6% increase in home values in 2022. On the other side, Zelman 3%. But there's literally nobody right now forecasting prices to go down. There's no doubt this competitive spring market, this competitive year, we will see home price appreciation. I think they'll raise this appreciation number as we go throughout the year. I don't know for certain, but I have an inkling that that's what might happen. But no doubt we're going to see appreciation in homes this year well above what we've seen in historical years. So trying to wait this out is going to cost you money, both real dollars today and future dollars in potential appreciation losses. I'm going to post links below to all of the data and quotes that KCM used in compiling this data for any and all that are interested. I hope this information has been beneficial for you and that it's given you some kind of insights to where we are and where we might be going as far as the housing market. And as always, I really would appreciate your referrals. So if you know of anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, I would love the chance to speak with them and be that expert that helps them throughout the process. Again, thank you so much. Please leave me comments to let me know if this was helpful for you and if there's anything that you would like to see differently. Have a great day.